Welcome to the introduction for B1. This is our book for gateways um, to art, and this is a really great book. It has a lot of information. In this particular chapter, be mindful of the vocabulary under the blue bar, usually on the left side of the page. So that's in the book. I can't give that to you here, but some of this is repeated in our art terms listing, but some of this is the author's particular vocabulary, so that make sure and look for that. The first one on page 27 says oil painting and medium, so write those down or study those. Okay, so what is art is a question our author's asking us, or our multiple authors I should say, and the first one they talk about is a Japanese piece, Maple Leaves on a River by Hokusai. We don't get to see that piece, but basically that one is more to do with the peaceful sensations of a fall day, of leaves falling onto a river and floating. This piece also to do with the river, and we have four total that we talk about, three images, and this is our first image, is an Egyptian piece. This is 3,000 years old, from the inner coffin of Nes Pa-Rashefi, and this has to do with the sun god Re sitting on his boat and going through the celestial river, basically thinking about the sun traveling through the sky on a boat, if you can imagine it that way. That's the way the Egyptians imagined it to be. So in order for the sun to rise each day, Re has to do battle with this serpent underneath here in the underworld and conquer Apophis, the serpent, and come out victorious, and that way the sun will rise. So it's a good piece for, or good subject matter for a coffin, because they're believing that there's a transition from the underworld into the afterlife, if that makes sense. So they're wishing for a happy afterlife for this pharaoh or this ruler, and that is why they painted this on there. So the depiction of the river here is very stylized. You think about this, this is water, there's a fish here. The snake is also very stylized, and Egyptian style is over 3,000 year period, meaning 3000 BC to the year around the year 0 when the Romans conquered. They show the feet in profile, the face in profile, the shoulders frontal. And you'll see this, and we'll talk more about this later, but that's just something to start you off, so it's stylized. That's important to know. Our next example is Niagara from Frederick Edwin Church, 1857. Now, we've seen a lot of landscapes probably over the years. You've been exposed to quite a few, but this is really the beginning of landscape painting in 1850s, because in the U.S., there's a lot of exploration going on, and all this wild nature is being depicted, and it's in its raw beauty. So partly to do with the idea that that God is present in nature, that's important in the American West. But this is really the north. This is the northern border. Canada is literally across this river here. Canada's just over here. So this is our northern border in upstate New York, near the town of Buffalo. But the Niagara Falls end the border of the U.S. and begins the border of Canada. So this is a highly representational and realistic piece. Representational means it looks like something. The Egyptian piece was representational but stylized. This is representational and realistic. Oil painting, massive painting, 7 feet by 3 feet. Okay, our last water connection here is Louise Nevelson's White Vertical Water, also kind of thinking about it as a waterfall. And her piece is all pieces of wood in different rectangles. I don't know if you can see those boxes in here. It's a little bit easier to see in the book, but you can kind of see these boxes, and then there's containment within. So these sort of undulations here, the roundness, here we have the geometric boxes, and then we have the rounding organic shapes that are within there, and that is supposed to be cascading water. This upper section here to the right, that is supposed to be fish. So we would call a piece like this abstract, highly abstract, because we can barely tell what it is. It could even be non-representational, meaning it's just some shapes and some paint and some wood. But in her case, she's saying that this has to do with water and it has to do with fish in a waterfall. So we'll take her word for that. And this is a sculpture. The last ones we just looked